Hi, I'm Jim with Pour the Juice, and in this video, it's the full review of this 1792 extended cask finish Zinfandel edition. So these came out, I don't know exactly how long these came out. I remember seeing a few videos of them months ago, and I randomly walked into a store in Florida, and this was sitting on the shelf. It was a Publix liquor store. And I'd never seen one up by me, up in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey area. And I love finished whiskeys, as you could tell. I think this top row is mostly finished. So yeah, I figured why not. And I had never tried a Zinfandel finished whiskey. I know there's a few out there, but I had never had one before. So couldn't really turn it down. I paid $55 for this bottle. I believe SRP on it is $50. Same as the other finished, extended cask finish options that came out with this one. I forget all the ones that came out. It came out around the same time as the cognac finished one. So I know there's a couple others. But this is the only one that they had on the shelf. So this is the one I picked up. And so I wanted to get into the official review here. And if you've ever watched one of my full reviews, full ratings, I have a rating scale out of 100 points. And that's made up of several different criteria. Flavor is the biggest criteria pool, and flavor is made up of 4 different subsets. So that's a pleasantness scale, intensity scale, finish, and viscosity. Those are all ranked out of 10. So flavor has 40 points total. Nose is made up of 2 subsets worth 15 points total. So that's pleasantness scale and intensity. Then I have value. Value is worth 15 points. And then there's complexity, balance, and uniqueness. Those are all 10 points. That's adding up to that 100-point scale. So far, I think I've done between 7 and 10 using the scale. And I do like the outcomes so far. The number one whiskey that I've reviewed using this has been the Barrel 37, and that's gotten 78 points. And then there's a bunch that are pretty close, but yeah, we'll see how well this one does. And I'm going to start with value, because value is the most interesting part to me, and that's something I can determine without even tasting the whiskey. So for me, value has nothing to do with the flavor in this grading scale. Value has to do with the age of the whiskey, the price of the whiskey, and if there's any sort of other criteria that would either lead it to have more or less points. So with this specific bottle, we're looking at $50 for a bottle of 101 proof whiskey. That, from what I could tell, is 5 years old, plus an additional 2 years in the finishing barrel. So total of 7 years aged. And it's finished in the finishing barrel, of course. So those are all things that add up to a pretty good value for this bottle. Anything over the number of years for every $10 of a whiskey is going to get higher value. So, at $50, if this is more than 5 years old, it's going to get a plus. So this is 5 plus 2 years old in the finishing cask, so it gets a plus. Anything over 100 proof gets a plus for me. So this is 101. Semantics aside, it does get that a little extra bump. And then because it's finished, that's also a plus for me. So I'm giving it 12 out of 15 points for value. I do think it's a pretty good value. $50 for a finished product is pretty great. 101 proof, can't complain. I could be argued to go a little bit higher on value than 12 points, maybe even 13 points. But 12 is where I landed. Going to nose next. So like I said, nose has 2 subsets. It's pleasantness and intensity. So for me, anything 4 or above, it's got to really jump out of the glass. 4.5, 5, I'm talking about like filling the room with the smell of the whiskey, not even have to put your nose in the glass. And it's not quite there, but it's certainly better than, an average whiskey. It's not a 2.5 out of 5 for intensity. What it is for me is a 3.5 out of 5. It is pretty intense. It's not quite a 4. It's definitely not a 4.5 or a 5. So 3.5, I think, is a pretty good score for this on the nose. As far as pleasantness, I really, really enjoy the smell of this whiskey. Now, if you've followed my videos at all, you know I like the smell on most whiskeys. I love smelling whiskey. And there's no exception with this one. I don't want to get into complexity or anything like that because pleasantness has nothing to do with that. Pleasantness really is just like how I feel when I smell the whiskey. Or on the flavor side of this, it'll be how I feel when I drink the whiskey. What do I think? So personally, I really enjoy the nose on this. It gets quite a bit of fruit on there. Quite a bit of fruit, and I really enjoy that. It could be better, but for me, it's very good on the nose. It gets 8 out of 10. So total for the nose, it gets 11.5 out of 15 points. Onto flavor. Viscosity, I gave it a 7 out of 10. For 101 proof, I think it's pretty viscous. I don't think it's mind-blowing. I don't think it's a great viscosity, but I think it's pretty good. So yeah, 7 out of 10 for viscosity. Intensity, I gave it an 8 out of 10. I do think it's a fairly intense whiskey. For 101 proof. Obviously, it's not going to punch you in the face like it's 125 proof. But for what it is, I did give it the 8 out of 10 points. And, I could probably be argued into going a little bit lower on that. So maybe the value, maybe that could go up a little bit. Maybe the intensity on flavor could go down a little bit. So it'll even out in the end, as of now at least. For the finish, I gave 8.5 out of 10. I think this has a really great finish. As soon as you get done swallowing this, the flavor turns into a cherry, like almost like a medicinal cherry, like somewhere in between like a cherry candy and a medicinal cherry. And it lingers there for quite a while. It's really, really nice. Some people, they talk about medicinal cherry and it's like, oh, I don't want that. But this is like I said, it's a little bit mixed between that and a cherry candy. And it's a fantastic finish. It just kind of hangs out there for a while and slowly dissipates. I really enjoy it. So like I said, 8.5 out of 10 on that. Pleasantness scale, I do enjoy this whiskey. It's good. I don't think it's great. It's much higher than above average. But I did give it a 7.5 out of 10. So all told for flavor, we're looking at 31 out of 40 points. That brings us to complexity, balance, and uniqueness. I'll go uniqueness first. Like I said before with value, this is, there's different parts of uniqueness. Proof could make it unique. Mash bill can make it unique. Finish can make it unique, obviously. So this is a finished whiskey that's already like sort of unique. Zinfandel finished is a lesser finish than I usually see out somewhere. Like I said, this is my first time trying a Zinfandel finish. So I do think that's fairly unique. And, 101 proof, there's only a couple whiskeys out there at that proof. And you know exactly what they are. So I give it an 8 out of 10 on uniqueness. Again, like I could be argued to go down to 7.5. That would probably be the lowest I would go for this whiskey. And then as far as, let's say, what do we want to do next? Balance. I do think the fruits in this do overpower the rest of the whiskey. There's a blackcurrant cherry thing going on that it's really, really nice, but it kind of pushes everything else to the side until the finish comes. I love 1792. I know 1792 whiskeys have great flavor on their own. Barton makes great juice. Now Sazerac owns Barton. They all make great juice. But I do think the fruit from the Zinfandel finish shines more than the rest of the whiskey. So balance, I only give it a 7 out of 10. Complexity, sort of the same thing for me. There's a lot of fruit. some of the other notes that I'd really want to get out of a Barton product, and that I usually do get out of a Barton product, are kind of hidden. You could find them if you really want to, but because of how powerful the fruit is, for me at least, um, those aren't as apparent. So while this should be a more complex whiskey, how finished whiskey is usually a more complex whiskey, this one, I think the fruit kind of overpowers the other notes that are in this whiskey. And so complexity, I give it a 7 out of 10 as well. Obviously it's more complex than a standard bottle of whiskey, to me at least, but it's because of the Zinfandel overpowering the other flavors, it's a little bit less complex than I think it should be. All told, the score for this whiskey is a 76.5 out of 100. That brings it into third place of the whiskeys that I've done this full rating scale on. So like I said, Barrel 37 got 78 points. New Riff 8 is at 77.5 points. And now this 1792 extended cask finish Zinfandel has 76.5, edged out Old Grandad 7-year by a couple points. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed the video. If this is something that you're looking for, if you love those cherry notes, and if you just love finished whiskey, you're probably really going to enjoy this, because I really enjoy it, to be honest with you. I would definitely buy any of the other ones that they put out if I could find them. But yeah, hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video, please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Cheers.